2025 PTS meeting. Would you please call the roll?
Mary Lou McKelman.
Here.
Jane Mitchell-Pate.
Here.
Mark Siracusa.
Here.
Erica Wygonick.
Here.
Deputy Police Chief Mike Maloney.
Here.
Fire Chief Bill McQuillan.
Here.
Public Works Director Peter Rice.
Here.
Stephanie Casella, Planning Department, is absent, and Chairman Andrew Bagley.
Here. And we have the financial report. And there's a way to
Move to
motion.
accept. Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We have public comment. Just come forward, state your name and address, and then try to keep your comments to 3 minutes or less, please.
So, good morning, I'm Gary.
You have to come up to a chair so the microphones can catch it for the people at home.
Gary Elmer, E-L-L-M-E-R, I'm at 448 Lang. I think most of the residents of Lang Road have come forward today to speak about the speed accident and potential traffic problems on Lang. So, there's been over the years, there's been a number of accidents there. It's easily a 40 to 45 mile an hour routine speed, especially in the summertime. It's posted at 30. At 418, which is my neighbor, there's a blind hill. And that blind hill leads to my driveway, it leads to Dave's driveway. What happens there, especially in the wintertime, is people come smoking over that hill, especially at night, and they lose control over the hill. I personally have lost my mailbox 6 times in 30 years. Dave has lost his a number of times. There's been a number of accidents from across the street where people are trying to exit onto Lang, and people come, very rapidly over the hill and hit the oncoming car. So it's been a real problem. There was a fatality there not too many months ago. I think it was determined to be medical in nature. But I think historically you'll look and see that there's a number of accidents on Lang from Bob's house to the south. Once you get past Bob's house, heading east or north, it's pretty quiet, and you've got an enforced slow down area now that we've turned the road. But once you get halfway down heading towards the beach, it becomes like an interstate highway down there. All of us have lived there for a number of years, and we've seen pretty much all of it. So there's the concern about what we can do about existing speed. There's the concern about the blind spot coming over the hill at 418. And then I think the other thing we're very concerned about now is there's an initiative to put a major housing complex down at the end of the road, over by where Judo's is. I can't think of the name of the street. And what in the world is that going to do to traffic and to speed on Lang as that develops over the years? So I think that's pretty much what I have.
Thank you, Gary.
You said it all applause.
The one thing I would like, my name's Dave Wilder, I live at 455. I've had 2 residences on Lang Road and 1 rental. And the problem has been there for 50 years. It's always been kind of a super highway to the beach, and people speed. There's the blind spot that he's talking about. I've dug many people out of the trees there. The one thing I really would not like to see is a speed bump in the middle of that road. It's not lit at night. Somebody comes over that hill at 50 miles an hour and hits a speed bump, they're going to be in the trees too. Some of the people wind up in my front yard, and I've lost 3 telephone poles, 20 mailboxes. I think something needs to be done. I really don't know what kind of solution you've got, but the basic problem is there's just too much traffic. These are carriageways. These are old, little, very small 2-lane roads. And now it takes a tremendous amount of traffic. See what you can do.
Thank you, Dave.
Valerie Elmer. I think You mentioned no speed bump, right?
Yeah.
I think if you had one before the hill, a distance before the hill, that might slow people down before they hit the hill. Just my opinion on that one.
Thank you, Valerie. Come on.
I'm George Ricker. I live at 362 Lang Road for about 20 years now. And I've seen traffic increase. Can't even tell you how much. Why? Back when I first moved in there, I got two driveways. One's a dirt, one's paved. There was always a police cruiser every night or even during the day in my lower driveway. Excuse me if I'm short of breath. And people coming towards Rye can't see that cruiser because of all the bamboo logs at the road. And it wouldn't be 15, 20 minutes. They had somebody was speeding. Coming from Rye, when they come up over that hill, that knoll, it is nothing but a straight stretch. And why there is more accidents there, I don't know. It's a hellhole down through there. I'd like to see more police present, if possible. And I know it puts a strain on it, but that place is getting ridiculous. And with Rye building the way they are building, the dump trucks that come down over that road, they're doing anything but the speed limit. 9 out of 10 of those dump trucks are going fast. So, I don't know whether there's a camera that the police department can get that takes a picture of the speeder and license plate number. I don't know if that's available here or not. But something's really got to be done on that road. And I gladly welcome having a cruiser parked right there. I guarantee you'll meet your quota.
You're not kidding.
Thank you, George.
Thank you.
I'm Lee Hudson. I live at 384 Lang Road, right next to him. And I moved in 2013. The traffic has increased significantly, and he's absolutely right. The other thing is there are no sidewalks on that road. There's barely any persons, people that are running, riding bikes, are first and foremost endangered. I've had, and you literally have to stop to let somebody who's walking, running, biking on that road so that the other traffic can pass, because it's not wide enough. I think the other thing is we've got 22 residences on that road. 7 of them have kids. Mine's one of them. I have a special needs boy. I've got 12 feet between my house and the edge of the road. It's dangerous. And nobody's going 30 miles an hour. Nobody. There's absolutely nobody going 30 miles an hour. I don't even go 30 miles an hour. I'll probably go 35. But I'm not following the speed limit. Nobody else is either. People are flying up and down that street. I'm just concerned about the 7 families. I'm concerned about the people that are actually using that road for walking, biking, doing all the activities that you'd want to do outside. It's a wonderful neighborhood, but it's dangerous. We got to do something about it. I asked 2 years ago if people would put in, or this group would actually put in a speed bump. I got no response. I got a nice, hail to actually check the speed, posted on the pole next to my house. I've also offered to have my driveway being used as he said, as a place for somebody to actually park and keep tabs on traffic. Somebody did yesterday. I don't know who it was, but they parked in the new chicane that's actually in Lang Road, where they actually redirected traffic. But I mean, it's a straight shot, and like you said, it's a straight shot down that street. And somebody coming down the hill from Rye could see him a mile away. I certainly did, but at the same time, it's like you need a place that's going to make a difference, right? You're going to need a place that actually a cruiser can park. And he's not wrong. Ben is absolutely not wrong. You're going to meet your quota without a problem. is set on that road. That's all I got to say. Thanks.
Point of clarification, Deputy Chief, can you speak to the concept of quotas? I don't believe there are any quotas, are there?
No, we don't have quotas. I know it's a
That already.
it's a familiar term and it's a point of reference, but we don't have quotas. Quotas are illegal. We don't have quotas.
By the way, I'd like to also point out, and I apologize for speaking up again, but if you did put speed bumps in or put a speed table in, it would impact 0.63 miles of that particular road. That would be it. I actually measured it, 0.63 miles. And that's because, and part of that's because obviously you're not gonna put a speed table where that new chicane is. You're not gonna put a speed table before the large multi-unit complex. You're gonna put it in that straightaway. That's 0.63 miles. It's not a lot of impact.
So normally public comment is discussion back and forth. I appreciate your comments. We'll get back to you. Along with the fact that some places may have quotas, we don't in Portsmouth. The revenues collected by our police department go to the state. They don't go to the city. And I'll just speak briefly. In the state of New Hampshire, it's illegal to have traffic cameras. I wish it wasn't because I think that would help a lot with speed, but it's not an option legally for us in Portsmouth. Does anybody else like to speak?
It's not about the Lane Road thing.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any parking, traffic, and safety concerns?
My name's Sam Meyerkoff. I live at 9 Prospect Street. When I moved in 5 years ago, there wasn't really any parking issues. A mansion was built, which is fine, which took a lot of street parking away, which basically we all kind of rely on. And then the last year or two, a bunch of no parking signs have popped up to the different places. I think one popped up 2 years ago, then one a year ago, 6 months, and then another one popped up. And now kind of there's nowhere to park. And now we're getting tickets for parking outside our house. And I'm, not totally sure the solution. And I guess I understand somewhat, even though some of the signs, if they were moved even a little bit, would open up, maybe a spot, which would help everyone out a lot. But I've gotten multiple tickets just parking outside my house where I've always parked, and now all of a sudden there's a sign there. And maybe if it's a trash day and there's certain hours that when you don't need to park there, or some stipulation like that, I totally understand. But otherwise, there's just not enough parking for the street with the house, which I understand is there now, and took up driveway that took up spots, and then all these signs that just keep popping up, and now we don't have anywhere to park.
Thank you, Sam.
No hurry for me. I already spoke last week. Good morning, Tyler Garzo, 62 McKinley. I would like to ask the committee to do more and to stop accepting permission slips for inaction from traffic engineering, fire, and police. The residents of Broad Street came to you last in June, no action. Business owners at Porter Street came to you with a plan to pedestrianize a block and the money to pay for it, placed on file. State Street is still one way, despite discussing crosswalk casualties at this committee earlier this year. Plans to slow down Woodbury have evaporated. Bartlett is watered down as humanly possible. Sidewalk projects in front of my house on McKinley, as well as nearby Lafayette Route 1, are actually road widening plans. The residents of Lang Road have come to you again today. Will this be placed on file or turned into another watered down solution? This is a parking and traffic safety committee. Please do more safety. Thank you.
Good morning, Matt Glenn, 34 Harrison Ave in Owen Park, and currently serving as president of Seacoast Area Bicycle Riders, a nonprofit. So as I think you're all aware, the city has just adopted a new bicycle and pedestrian plan last month. I was on the advisory committee. I don't think it's a perfect plan, but I'm glad there are goals for a bicycle and pedestrian network. And apologies if I dropped that word, but it's a bicycle and pedestrian network plan. One of the recommendations in that plan was for a bicycle and pedestrian advisory committee to be formed.
Unfortunately, the city council chose not to go that direction. They voted to adopt the plan and the recommendations in it, but then they ignored that recommendation. Instead, they seem to think that this is the right place for bike and pedestrian issues to be discussed. I am not aware of the meetings I've attended or watched of this committee, of this group ever really looking at the bike and pedestrian plan. My apologies if that's incorrect. So I would just hope that you can take that council directive to have that be part of your mission, to include bike and pedestrian networks. You serve a great purpose. I see that you're going to be considering traffic calming on Lang. You got a lot of complaints from homeowners and abutters on specific streets, but I really hope this committee can look at the bigger picture and look at the network and figure out how do those kids get from here to this school across the city, and not just look at specific intersections. So I have two specific ideas for this committee. One would be if at least 2 or 3 times a year you held a meeting that was specifically about the bicycle and pedestrian network, and you invited the public to be a part of it as well, so that you could continually be referencing that plan and looking at both the infrastructure and the non-infrastructure recommendations that are in there. And my second idea is that for every street change you consider, if, for example, you look at Lang Road, you also look at what our last 2 bike ped plans recommended for that street or that intersection or that spot. Even if it's a loading zone you're considering changing, the council packet could very easily include information about what the bigger picture plans have recommended. So just some food for thought, and I think the ball's in the court of this committee now to take that council directive and figure out how to look at the network. Thanks.
Thank you, Matt.
Hi all, Bob Gilotti, 2929 Lang Road. I spoke last week, so I'm going to keep it short. Just one more dramatic story. I hate to have these stories. Saturday afternoon, my 2 friends and I are biking. I come over the crest. I'm at my house, maybe a half mile on the left. I look over my shoulder. There's no one in front of me coming this way. I didn't see a car, anything. So I moved to the middle of the road to take my left-hand turn, and I actually put my arm out, and a truck comes barreling over the crest, passes my friends doing 50, and I wasn't looking. He came right up my ass, put his horn on, and was about to pass me as I'm turning left into my driveway. My friends were irate that I didn't pull over to the right and ditch myself into the wetlands. Talk about bicycle prevention and safety. Last comment, we've already talked last week. It's 40 decades and decades of a speeding culture that's been developed here with no action by the city, and that's why we're here today. And incremental change is not going to work because these folks, it's going to be hard to break their habit of going at these speeds. So some kind of permanent solution. I know we have issues with speed bumps and all that, but find some alternatives if that's not the solution. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Anybody else? Before we move on, I'll comment. This is, residents of Lang Road, this is the biggest complaint that we get from a lot of areas of the city about traffic being too fast in their neighborhood. We don't have a very successful city way to address these issues. And when we take more assertive measures, such as the mini roundabout on Bartlett or the original Middle Street bike lane plan, there tends to be a lot of pushback from people in town on traffic calming measures because in order for traffic calming to be effective, it has to make you feel uncomfortable, so you drive slower, and people tend to not like that when they're in their cars. So we'll continue to advocate for methods. We also have challenges with speed bumps. Portsmouth is it the National Fire Code, Chief, that we follow? In there are prohibitions against certain traffic calming measures. such as speed bumps at the discretion of the fire department. So we understand your concerns. We've tried other things like rapid flashing beacons at crosswalks. We've tried the speed feedback signs. Those things, while effective, are not greatly effective, and over time they become less so. So we will look at this, but if you have any great ideas, let us know, because we face this challenge a lot throughout the city, and getting people to drive slower in their cars is a very challenging thing to do. With that, Mary Lou?
Well, I just wondered if there's a plan, the city has a plan to meet with these neighbors as the city has done with other neighborhoods that have very similar complaints. And, there's been extensive work with other neighborhoods. Is that a plan to actually meet with a group rather than having them come to our meetings?
Before we answer that, could you take a second and talk about how traffic calming requests come in and how we address those, Eric?
Sure. We have an online portal on the city's webpage. When people have concerns about traffic speeds and other concerns, they can go and fill out an application for the traffic calming procedure. And what that does is they state their issue, where it's happening, when it's happening, give as much detail to us as possible. That comes to me for review, and I determine what their request is, whether that should come to PTS for further action, whether it's something I can handle administratively. And then we get back to them. That's how the process begins, and we can keep track of it and show the people where this stands in the process. And usually, if it's something that we can do, we'll bring it to this committee for further review and action. So that is the process. Rather than getting a request into me through an email or a phone call and we go off on our own, we need to keep it in this process so we're all aware of what's happening.
I understand.
So in this case, the residents have brought this forward. We start with data collection and we look at it. And we look at what options we have available. Is certain road width, so there's a certain right-of-way available to modify the roadway. If there's not a lot of width available in the right-of-way, it limits our options. The evaluation looks at whether there's short-term solutions, whether we can put signs up, whether we can do minor modifications to paint, anything that could potentially benefit and help reduce traffic. If those are not effective, there needs to be infrastructure changes. You need to literally change the configuration of the roadway, put curbing in, put sidewalks in, do something. And those all have to be put into the capital improvements plan, which costs a lot of money. 0.6 miles of roadway is not an inexpensive amount of roadway to reconfigure. So, we're more than happy to continue this dialogue, and we will, we're evaluating this. It came in. We don't ignore resident requests. However, there's limited things that can be done in the short term to address, really a road configuration issue. I mean, we have the same challenges on Beverly Hill Road,
Right.
which we're working on, and it's a slow process. We're working with Elwyn Road. There are other areas throughout the city that are really road configuration challenges.
And then we also have a history. Sometime, if you recall, Dennett Road, we looked at that. There was a lot of concern when we came forward with the only proposed workable solutions. The neighborhood decided that they didn't want to move forward with those two. So we do work with neighborhoods, but
Well, I know
generally
that.
the
That's what-
outcome is not as good as people would hope.
I think other neighborhoods have had a spokesperson that has been able to communicate with the neighborhood and with the city, and maybe that's an idea for the
Oh, and Lang Road
group.
does as well. Yes.
One spokesperson?
I don't know if he nominated himself, but in my mind.
Can we maybe get back on the agenda
Yeah.
and we can bring this up?
Sorry,
Or
I
during
just
other business?
thought as long as these people are sitting here, a way
I
to
know.
address this.
Yeah, sorry, that was my fault, I guess.
Is public comment closed?
Yes.
Not yet, we didn't
Oh,
close it.
we didn't close it technically.
Okay.
Andrew, could I ask one question?
Oh,
Just go ahead.
Yes.
yeah, one question and
I'd
then.
just like to start with, can we actually do a data project, right? Is if we could measure speed right at the crest of that hill, right, which is, it was what, 418? Over some period of time, just so you know exactly what we're talking about and how bad it is, would that be an extraordinary request for you to do that?
No, we can do that.
So that's done?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's very
This
typical.
is-
Yeah, let's move on with the meeting. That's,
we can talk about
we'll
this
put
in
out
miscellaneous.
the Pelican boxes, and then we'll get data on the road with speeds, average speed,
Thank you.
maximum
That's a great
speed, all
start,
that.
thank you. I'm good.
Sorry, just want to be, sorry, Lee, I'm going to close public comment, because I want to be cognizant of everybody's time.
Is there anyone online that has public comment?
I'm gonna be rude and make a statement then, because I have actually filed that form and nothing happened. Absolutely zero.
Old business, Daniel Street, reapprove 15-minute spaces at 22 Daniel Street. Move to reapprove 2 15-minute spaces in front of 22 Daniel Street and conversion of 3 15-minute spaces to Zone A spaces on the south side of Daniel Street between Market Street and Penn Hollow Street.
I'm so glad we have new business.
What's that?
We have new business.
Oh, sorry. I didn't bring my laptop today. Market Street at Nobles Island and New Hampshire Port Authority intersection, request for no U-turn outbound on the Market Street by residents and DPW. Sample motion, move to approve prohibiting U-turn movements on the outbound side of Market Street at the intersection with Nobles Island.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I'll bring this up. We did bring this up about a year or so ago, and nothing was done at that time. But since then, there was a serious accident at the Nobles Island intersection with a dump truck tried to make a U-turn, cutting across several lanes, with a motorcycle ran into him. And there has been a constant issue with U-turns running over the landscaping in front of the Nobles Island on the shoulder and tearing up the landscaping and irrigation system. So it's really not, with the recent narrowing of the roadway there, it does not accommodate U-turns anymore. Vehicles have to do a 3-point turn in order to do a U-turn. So based on that difficulty of making a U-turn plus the safety involved, it's our recommendation that the U-turns be prohibited at that location now. Possibly signing could be included that says if desired to reverse direction, go up to the next intersection at Submarine Way where there's a lot more width and ability to make a U-turn. Much safer location. So that's where this came from, recent accident, damage to vegetation and landscaping.
Any further discussion? Erica?
I think the only concern I have is that becomes a pretty large stretch where someone can't reverse direction. I don't know what the distance is, but there's median further down too.
It's not even a tenth of a mile.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a very short distance.
From there to there, but there's already, looking at my map, that's my main concern, is whether people will adhere to it if it's perceived as burdensome.
I don't see it as an issue. I mean, it really is, it's not that far a distance.
The median is much wider here, and you have 2 lanes plus a shoulder, so there's a lot more room to make that U-turn maneuver here at this location.
Now, are U-turns technically prohibited throughout the city? I thought that was the case.
Only specifically called out.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Bless you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Alright. Old business. Daniel Street, reapproval of 15-minute spaces at 22 Daniel Street. Sample motion, move to reapprove 2 15-minute spaces in front of 22 Daniel Street and the conversion of the 3 15-minute spaces to Zone A spaces on the south side of Daniel Street between Market Street and Hollow Street.
So this, can you measure?
Yeah, can we get a motion and then a second?
Second.
And if you can explain what's happening here.
Yes, the committee voted on this measure 3 years ago. And for whatever reason, it didn't make it into the council approval process. When, every measure that this committee approves is good for a year on a trial basis, and then it goes to council for approval for 3 readings. For whatever reason, this one did not make it through that 3 reading process by the city council, so bringing it back again to the committee to once again approve it, that sets it in process for another temporary 1 year, and it can be approved next summer when we do the full omnibus 3 readings for all council actions. So it's been in place for several years. There's been no problem with having these 2 15-minute spaces, and all the spaces on this side of the street are regular Zone A spaces. So it's just reapproving an action this committee did 3 years ago.
Erica?
The part, so it says move to reapprove 2 15-minute spaces in the front of 22 Daniel Street. Those are the 2 in yellow.
Yes.
And then it says, and conversion of 3 15-minute spaces to Zone A spaces on the south side between Market and Penn Hollow. Which are those?
These are the spaces down here.
Okay.
They used to be 15-minute spaces.
Okay.
when this change was made, we changed both of these, we converted these 15-minute spaces to Zone A spaces and made these 2 spaces 15-minute spaces. So that was all part of the same measure 3 years ago.
And then is that a loading zone in the hash?
This one here?
Yeah.
Yes, that's loading zone. That hasn't changed, that's been there.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Rooster Street, reapproval of request to change loading zone hours from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., Monday through Friday, to 6 a.m. to 11 a.m., Monday through Saturday by abutting businesses. Sample motion, move to reapprove changes of loading zone hours on Brewster Street from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., Monday through Friday, to 6 a.m. to 11 a.m., Monday through Saturday.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
So we had approved this obviously before, if it's a reapproval,
Yes.
and there have been no neighborhood complaints at the for the 6 a.m. Because we don't allow construction before 6 a.m., we allow it at 7. I'm just wondering if there were neighborhood
Eric,
complaints.
I can just add a little background on this. What happened is, it was approved a few months ago, but this Islington Street has been under construction during that whole time. It was not possible to go out and change the signs, because there were no signs there, because everything was under construction. So now that we have a chance to put the signs in place, we'll have the new hours on there, and we'll give it a shot and see how it goes, and then if it's all good, it will be approved next summer.
Okay.
It restarts the 1-year trial again, because we weren't able to implement it.
Are loading zone hours, Eric, consistent throughout the city?
For the most part,
For the
there
most
are a
part.
few that have
There's
special
some
hours.
that have special.
Yes, and they're called out in the ordinances. And this was a request from the restaurant there, the kitchen, to change those hours because it better suits their use and their customers' use.
Erica?
Have we talked to, I mean, they're not the only business there. Are other businesses okay with this also?
They're primarily the ones, I mean, there's the kitchen, the Cafe Killam, but the loading zone is primarily used by that business there. So that's the point of doing the 1-year trial. We put it in place and see if that creates any issues. But
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Islington Street, report back on possible measures to prohibit left turn lanes to and from Jewel Court. Sample motion, move to approve installation of yellow flex posts on the center line of Islington Street between the stop line of Bartlett Street and the south side of Jewel Court.
So moved.
Second.
Eric, do you want to give a quick
Yes,
update?
so we discussed this last month, and the motion was to discuss this with the budding businesses and report back. So I did meet with the Two Brothers Garage folks here, because it primarily would impact using their driveway here on Islington Street. It would restrict them to right turns in and right turns out. They did not have a problem with it. They said most of their customers are right in, right out anyways. They advised people to come down and make a U-turn down at the Pick and Pay parking lot here to reverse direction. And most people who want to take a left out of there are using this other driveway on Bartlett Street already. I told them, they are flex posts. If they ever needed to, with a large flatbed truck, make a left in or out, it would be possible to drive over the flex posts. They would pop back up again. But for the most part, he says it really is not going to affect his business. And, he's seen the issues out here with the accidents and the difficulty getting in and out. In fact, when I drove in there, I made a left turn in here. I was waiting for this vehicle here. He was waiting for me to make my left into Jewel Court. It was a hand standoff. No one knew which way to go. It's a really confusing area right here. So we recommend extending these flex posts up to at least here, just making sure that large vehicles making a right turn out of Bartlett would have room to swing around and not hit flex posts. So I would think we'd have at least flex posts from this point down to here to prohibit those left turns in and out of Jewel Court.
And did you say there were additional accidents since our last meeting, or the day of the meeting?
There was. When we discussed this the last meeting, just an hour or two later, there was an accident at the intersection. Same thing happened again. There was someone waiting to make a left turn. A truck came around the right, made the right turn, and rear-ended them because they weren't looking. And then it was either last week or the week before, there was another accident out here. Someone, was in the left turn lane. They opened up a gap so that someone could turn left in front of them, and the straight vehicle T-boned them right here. So there's been about 5 accidents in the last 3 months at this intersection.
So Are accidents also occurring coming out of Jewel Court, trying to cross into the second lane so they can take a left-hand turn? Because that seems to be an issue also. So they're coming out of Jewel Court, they want to turn left onto Bartlett, and they have to cross that first lane of traffic.
Yeah, well,
To the left.
there really hasn't been any accidents we've seen there yet. What happens is they'll come out and block the through lane, and then they end up sometimes even backing up just to allow that traffic to get through.
Right.
But there hasn't been any accidents due to that we've seen. It's still just a difficult move.
So there will be signage saying no left turn into Jewel Court.
Yeah, we could put a sign here, and I think it's going to be obvious that you can't make a left if you have a.
People read them.
But I think people are going to be looking to the left and seeing, and then they're going to see the post there and realize,
Hopefully.
oh, I can't turn left.
I have 2 questions. First, for flex posts, how long can they stay up? Like, can they stay up through the winter, or?
Probably not, and we'll have to remove them. They'll get bolted into the pavement and then removed when plowing comes.
Okay, so are we planning on implementing this soon and then taking them out?
Yes, we have the flex posts ready to go. It's just we wanted to get approval from this committee first.
Okay. And then my next question is, what is the proposed path of flow for people coming down Islington, like toward Bartlett, to get into the Two Brothers garage?
Oh, if you're coming up Islington from this direction?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you can make a left in here and then a left into their driveway on Bartlett Street.
Okay, thank you.
Erica?
I just want to confirm, I'm 95% sure this is the case, but the proposal is what's written in words, not this graphic, right?
Yes.
Like, we're talking about a longer extent of flex post than
Correct.
illustrated in the graphic.
Correct, yeah. This is the old graphic from last month. I didn't update it.
I figured, but I just wanted to
Good point.
confirm.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? And informational, Chief, could we have the police monthly accident report?
Certainly. We're talking about July. We had a total of 85 crashes, of which 34 were reportable, and happy to report no crashes involving pedestrians or bicyclists in July.
Thank
We'll
you.
reiterate the crashes at Jewel and Islington. I think it was, as Eric mentioned, I think it was the same day after this meeting. I laughed, but I think I heard it come in over the radio because we had just left this meeting and I heard a crash at that intersection. It's certainly a problem, so we're in full support of getting these up sooner rather than later, see if we can get some relief there.
Really?
Question. How's your electric vehicle program going? Electric bike.
Yeah, the enforcement's going well. I think we've cut down
Cars.
quite a bit. We're seeing a good response from the community. The word is certainly out that we're stopping OCEVs. We're not stopping e-bikes, but we're stopping and identifying and educating those who are riding what's equivalent to a dirt bike. So yeah, we're happy with what we've seen, and I can't think anecdotally of any crashes in the last month or so involving. Well, as the data supports, at least in July, no crashes involving OCEVs or e-bikes that I'm aware of.
Good. Thanks for doing all that.
Erica?
It seems like we're ahead of schedule on crashes. Kind of like looking at through July, it's a little bit more than half the year, but it seems like we're well above half of each of these lines, both, all three, bike, ped, and vehicle crashes. Is there anything we can do? Is there,
Well, no. If there was something it's not a flippant answer, but if there was something that we could do to reduce them, we would.
I'm sorry, can I ask for clarification on your statement? Is it that we're averaging more accidents?
No, like if you look at the 2025 bicycle crashes per year, we're already at, 3 for the year? I mean, it's a small number, so small variations make a big difference, but that's already tied with the whole year for 2022, which is the second highest, and only one crash behind 2020. Like, those are full year, we're looking at full year data and compared to just roughly half year data.
So I would argue you need to normalize that data somehow, because the volume of bicycle traffic has It's been,
But I mean,
it's
it's
been
this,
exponential
it's the same
increase.
for all. Like, if you look at pedestrians, we're at the same number of pedestrian crashes for all of 2021, more than 2024. If you look at vehicle crashes, those are also, you know, we have a bigger number there, but it's still more than 50% of most of a full year's data.
And
And it should be, 'cause we have
If you're
July,
looking year
but-
to year to year, I think what ultimately we're seeing are the results of a growing city, period.
Okay.
We have more of everything. We have more cars. We have more traffic. We have the same roads largely for infrastructure. We have, as Peter mentioned, more people on bicycles than ever before. So I think if there's increases in any particular crash set, and I think it was the month before last, I think we had an anomaly of two ped bikes and one bike or what have you. I think as the weather gets nicer and more people are out, and there's a lot of people and there's a lot of cars in this city, and much like many New England small cities, they're not designed particularly well to accommodate both in some areas. So we have the crashes. I mean, I think our whole goal with traffic enforcement is to reduce crashes and reduce injury crashes and reduce the feeling of insecurity, but safety for our residents. Traffic enforcement is a huge part of what we do every day. But regardless of that, we've looked at our traffic enforcement as it relates to crashes over a period of time. Does more traffic enforcement reduce crashes? So if we have a ton of traffic enforcement in a certain period of time, do we look at that crash data and say we lowered it? The answer is sometimes yes, sometimes no. Last week we had a little bit lower number of motor vehicle stops, but we had 4 crashes in the city, 4 reportable crashes in the city last week, which is actually incredible. Usually we're averaging around a dozen, maybe 15 reportable crashes a week. We had our staff meeting on Tuesday and there were 4. So that's 4 reportable crashes in 7 days. That's really low. But at the same time, our motor vehicle stats were a little bit lower. So it's tough to put your thumb on and kind of get a handle on.
So Eric, I think for these numbers to be need to be put in the context of volume of traffic and volume pedestrian, volume bicyclists, because if you just look at the numbers and you don't say the rate, you're not getting an accurate depiction of whether something is increasing or not, because it could be a much lower rate, but just because the sheer volume, it appears to be more, and you know that. I'm not telling you something you don't know. So I guess the question.
I'm just trying to be proactive so that we don't end up finishing the year with
I
a record that we don't want.
I guess my concern is that if the statement is made and the general public here, we're increasing, our rate of crashes are higher, they may walk away with a misperception in terms of what's actually happening. I mean, the PD works very hard at minimizing it. And given the volume of bicycle traffic that I've seen, and I'm an avid bicyclist, I see many more groups of bicyclists out on the street. So Eric, I don't know if the traffic counts, you're able to go back and do anything to correlate volume of traffic. I know we don't necessarily have good data on volume of bicycle and pedestrian traffic everywhere. But it might be worth, annually taking the data and saying, okay, has the volume of traffic gone down and the accidents gone up? Then we got a big issue. Has the traffic accidents stayed relatively normal, but the traffic volume's greater, then we're maybe improving. So, I mean, hearing statements from the public saying that we're not doing anything and that we don't care, it's just concerning.
Yeah, I don't think those statements are true. Mostly, I was just looking at this data myself and, tracking July to July and noticing that we seem to be ahead. And so, just wondering if there was a theme or something we could be doing, or
there is something with this graph too. So if you look, the vehicle accidents by year include 2018 and 2019 data sets, which were, I'd say, tracking below. However, the pedestrian and the bicycles only go back to 2020. So I don't know if those would also be indicative of the increased, because there is more traffic
And the
certainly now
scales
than
are-
there was in
no, it's-
20 or 21. But I think every year it's increasing. So it's because the data set doesn't go back as far on bicycle and pedestrians, it may be
Well,
skewing
I'd be
that a little
interested to
bit.
see if we can capture some of the traffic volume and kind of normalize some of this data somehow.
We do have a few locations where we're collecting traffic volumes, pedestrian volumes, bicycle volumes on a 24/7, 365 basis. And so we could take a look at that.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
And as far as locations go, we have a crime analyst who puts the data together for this meeting. And anytime we have some hotspots or trends, in answer to your question, what can we do? We definitely target specific areas where we see an increase or a spike in crashes. We'll target that for increased enforcement. But so we're always very mindful of intersections or areas that are a problem. Durham Street and New Hampshire come to mind. That was a project that started with Eric. I think we worked with the police department. We worked looking at increased crash data up on Pease at the intersection of Durham, New Hampshire Corporate. And based on that, we installed a four-way stop. So, and that was based on crashes we were seeing there and a direct result of this committee's actions. So.
I got a question, Eric, and this is off a similar topic. On the corner of Elwyn and Lafayette Road, there's that intersection, the old Yokins intersection. Sometimes a left-hand turn heading off Elwyn Road to go into Beverly, it's a flashing yellow. How does that automatically kick in, or is that set by somebody, or?
It's the way the signal's programmed.
Okay.
If there's any vehicles on the opposing approach or in the left turn lane, and it depends, when the vehicles are present in a certain lane, then it'll come on as a flashing yellow. And if the vehicle sits there a long enough period, it'll turn to a solid green. So it depends on the traffic volumes and when they arrive at the signal.
So the volume triggers it.
Yeah, and when they
Low
arrive.
volume, it seems like low volume, and that's what you see.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And how long this vehicle's sitting there being detected.
All right, thank you, Chief. Hanover Garage Project status update.
So the garage project's nearing completion. It's really almost to a point of punch list type stuff. Probably, we're looking at the end of this month, hopefully getting it completely back, but we're starting to reclaim some of the spaces now. But the bulk of the work is complete, and we're just hopefully going to be done soon.
Great, thanks for the update. And C, traffic calming request process and procedures.
Yes, we touched on that at the beginning during the public comment period. There is a form online, an application that can be filled out. And that comes to me for review to determine if it's a traffic calming measure that would be appropriate or if it can be handled a different way. And if it needs to be brought to this committee, then that is done. So it is online for people to see. So we track them all. We get maybe 2 or 3 a year through that process. We get more than that coming in just emails and phone calls. We're trying to get people directed to that process so we can track them better and see what has been done.
Great. Erica?
I think it might, I know that it's kind of in a similar area of the website, but I feel like it might help to have a link even to that page on our PTS page. I feel like our PTS page maybe is due for a mild refresh anyway.
Yeah, some of the information on that is dated.
Yeah.
So it needs, and I noticed the link seems to be not working. It's supposed to go to the OpenGov process, and so it's on my list to refresh that and make sure it's functioning properly.
If our goal is to get people to use the form more, I feel like, I'm biased, but I would go to the PTS page to start. I don't know if others would, but if they're showing up at the meeting, presumably they've found us somehow. So maybe we even, we have some standard text here. Maybe we start including it at the bottom, like if you have requests, this is where you submit them.
No, I think that's a great idea.
We don't want to multiply our requests like bunnies, but at the same time, if we want people to use that form, just making it more readily available.
I mean, in the process, the request comes in, whether it's verbal or whether it's through the website. Data collection, it gets started. It doesn't mean we're going to automatically do something, because when we automatically do stuff, people get, pretty upset. Things slow down a lot. The data gets collected, Eric reviews it and says, are there simple things we can do that within administrative, within our own purview? If not, a solution is brought to this committee, and then it's reviewed. And you have been through this multiple times. We have public meetings. Woodbury Avenue is a great example. We had proposed doing a number of chicanes and narrowing. That wasn't acceptable. We looked at doing speed tables, speed bumps. That was not acceptable. We've done a number of things on that roadway to try to improve and do traffic calming. And when we go to the public, there's a lot of pushback. I know there's folks that would feel that, it doesn't matter if the public's pushing back or not, just do it. But we can't do that, because then the council gets contacted, and the council, rightfully is responsive to the residents, and we have to back the whole process up again. And oftentimes that entails reworking roadways that aren't working. A good example of this, however, is Aldridge Road, which initially, what we did modifications based on resident improvement. When we were done, they came back and said, no, we want more. And so incrementally, more was done over time. So it's a slow process, but it's responsive to the residents' requests.
Yeah, and this may be getting into miscellaneous, but related to the request process, so did a Lang Road resident submit a request through the link?
Not recently. I'm not sure, there was a comment about having done it in the past. I'll have to go back and look and see. I don't recall them coming in.
It is also possible with these form requests that if you don't put in your contact info, because we get them at the council too, there's no way to contact you.
Okay.
Or if there's a typo or something. So that's certainly happened. Maybe not in this case, but it's happened in other cases in the past.
So in Lang Road, it's an interesting, historically we have had concerns. The chicane that was put in there was in response to some of those concerns, and it addressed a certain aspect of that roadway. We've looked at other sections of that roadway and have very limited right-of-way. It drops right off into wetlands. There isn't a simple solution. It is a major thoroughfare. What's the definition of the roadway? It's a
arterial or collector.
The volume of traffic is significant, and everything they've said is 100% correct. But it's if there was a simple solution, it would have been done. So it entails major construction projects at this point. So we'll come back, look at it, and report back on what our findings are.
Do you want to give an update on your Islington Street project? I know it's not on the agenda.
It's not on the agenda, but Islington paving, final paving was done yesterday. There's some minor driveway aprons that are being worked on just to finalize it and some punch list stuff. But for all intents and purposes, a 1 mile stretch of roadway that cost $21 million is complete.
Looks great.
It's a very, it's improved water,
Sidewalks
sewer,
are wonderful.
stormwater, infrastructure, which you don't see underground.
Yeah.
But it improved the streetscape significantly above ground, and it makes for a nicer roadway, gateway to the west end. It's a nice, a nice thing, and it wouldn't have been done without the support from City Council and the residents in that area continuing. However, somebody needs to acknowledge that it started in 1997. So this has been a very long process, and it should be noted that a lot of times projects like this take a long time. Beverly Hill Road's been underway, in design or something for 15 plus years. It's not on the agenda, but we had a good meeting with the DOT and the designers a couple days ago, and so we have approval to move forward with negotiations for easements, which have been a huge, something that's taken time. So that should be starting soon, and hopefully next spring we'll start to see, a bid for construction. That's the intent.
Keep patching that road.
So that all started with CSO, combined sewer flow?
No, it started with a request for a sidewalk.
Oh. In 1997.
No, Islington was CSO.
Oh, I'm
Beverly
talking
Hill
about Islington.
Islington it was purely streetscape. It was purely a streetscape request back then.
But the CSO is what's really driven a lot of these
a lot of the infrastructure has been driven by consent decree, EPA, federal requirements.
All right, any more miscellaneous?
You know, I just,
Erica?
A bunch of them, sorry.
good for you.
Can we get an update on the Maplewood Ave Bridge? How's that? Gonna be done in
October.
November?
2A, it's not gonna be done, there'll still be some work to be done. They should be putting binder down this next week, I believe. Tyler, are you up to speed on that? You're not? I know that what they're doing right now is the sidewalk is a structural sidewalk because there's conduit stuff underneath it. So that's, they did the conduit just this last week, and the paving base coat on the other side should be going down in the next couple weeks. So, and then they do curbing, then they do the sidewalk, and then once that's done, the guardrail gets up.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Did you have more?
Yeah, I did, sorry. I noticed the social drinking areas was in the paper, and I'm sure this will come up at
It
city
relates to
council,
parking, traffic, and safety.
because I think it's potentially a driving concern.
The state hasn't even released the rules, and the council just voted to put it on the ballot for the residents to decide. It's so early in the game that it's not even worth talking
I
about.
was just curious about traffic safety perspective of.
There's no rule set for it, so we don't even know what they'll look like yet. The Liquor Commission has to build a framework.
That's it?
Mary Lou, did you have one?
Well, yes. I'm concerned about the size of the delivery, I guess they're delivery trucks that are coming downtown. And I mentioned to Andrew, I saw a large 18-wheeler coming up Marcus Street with another 18-wheeler coming down at 2:15 in the afternoon, day last week. And I was behind the one coming through town. And I followed it, and it just seemed so dangerous. It's so wide and so large. And then it went through a red light at Middle and Maplewood. And so I don't know where it went because I was stopped at the red light. But I'm just looking at the volume and the size of the trucks that are coming in. And they're not just, 2:15 in the afternoon. I don't know what they're doing. Just bringing that up as a consideration. I don't know if the council deals with that or... We can't regulate, obviously, the size of vehicles coming in, but it is a concern. I'm just voicing my concern about it.
Thank you. Jane?
I wanted to bring up what one of the residents brought up about the bike and pedestrian network plan. Is there guidance for the committee on like how we incorporate and refer back to that as we continue to make, as a consideration as we continue to make decisions on things, or like look at data related to bicycle and pedestrian accidents and things like that?
That's an excellent question. My presumption, Peter, correct me if I'm wrong, is when you guys present plans to us, you kind of incorporate all of the different goals of the city with any project. And then we, as committee members, evaluate the plans that they presented, and we, should use the tools that the city has made available. But I don't think there's any formal process to do so.
Yeah, so the plans are just that. They're plans, they're data points when we're doing projects. When possible, we can incorporate aspects of the plan that is appropriate for the project. We are cognizant of, there's a lot of different things that have input to how we make decisions. Sometimes it may be a minor project associated with a roadway, if it's just maintenance paving, and it's not intended to be a rework of the roadway. If we can accommodate bicycle lanes in that, we will. But if it's requires reworking curb lines and things like that, and it was not included as part of the project, it may not do that. So it's informing us as we evaluate things. And Matt Glenn pointed out to try to be more cognizant of that. I think that's a positive thing. I think we need to all be in our free time, read it and kind of think about it in the context of the overall network goals. He's 100% correct. Our vision when we do this is how do we get connectivity in different spots. There are areas like in the southern portion of the city that have difficult times getting to ball fields, getting to schools, getting to downtown. We want to make sure what we do is start to make those connections and don't make decisions that preclude better decisions as we go forward. Great example is the bike trail. how do we improve access along that, the Route 1 corridor to that bike trail? Because that's a nice, safe option for folks. So we're looking at spurs coming off the bike trail to be able to serve areas like the Patriot Park, Maple Haven. How do we do that? So,
Maybe related to that, maybe we could have a presentation. I don't think this committee has gotten a summary of kind of the key points from the bike ped plan, so maybe one of our soon meetings, we could, I don't know who would be the right.
Jillian?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
We'll request that planning present kind of the summary of the program and where you can find it. It's online, which.
But sometimes I forget because we'll get presented things at council. They don't get presented here, but in my mind, we've already seen them.
We'll get that scheduled.
All right.
One of other items, yes, yeah, very important item is that the state has started their 10-year plan process again. Every 2 years they do this. And they're having a hearing 2 weeks from tonight in Greenland. That's the closest one to Portsmouth. And that's when the public is welcome to come out and express their support, their desire for any capital projects that they'd like to see the state implement. A big issue this year is that they are short on funding and they have cut projects from the 10-year plan, proposed to cut projects. And one of the projects they have cut is the study of the traffic circle to come up with best alternative. So what this means is if that design project gets dropped from the 10-year plan, it has to start all over again and get re-support and to get back onto the plan. So at this point, if it passes as proposed right now, there will be no study of the traffic circle, which means no improvements to the traffic circle for a long time.
Which has spillover impacts to Woodbury, Bartlett,
the neighborhoods,
all those neighborhoods. So this is a big deal. It's something that we've been waiting for a long time.
Yeah, so it would be great if we get more public that comes out and says, we want this traffic circle included back in the plan. It's $1 million for a study to determine the best alternative to fixing the traffic circle. Without that study, you can't even move on forward with any improvements.
When is that?
It's 2 weeks from tonight. It's in Greenland.
Where?
I think it's the Central School.
Do you know the time?
I believe it's 7 p.m. I can call that up right now.
Is that something you
So
can
it's on
email
a
out to the committee?
Thursday.
Is that a
I think so.
meeting
Yeah,
violation?
let's push that out to the committee and maybe,
Maybe you can post it on the
To
city
Seacoast
Yeah.
Online too.
yeah, I'll talk to the.
Thank you.
Under the city news that comes out once a week.
Lafayette corridor plan, is that okay at the moment?
That has been the Lafayette State's project for Route 1.
Yes.
Yes, but that in the 10-year plan, they're proposing to push that out several more years now.
So we might want to make mention of that too.
Yeah, and not increasing the funding. It was already short funded for construction, but now they're even pushing it out further, which means by the time they get to that time frame in the plan, the money that's allocated now will be worth even less due to inflation. So they're talking about maybe we don't do the whole plan, maybe we just do segments or portions of it. So they're looking for input on that. It'd be great to have public support come out and say, yes, we really want this project included, keep it back on the original schedule, don't push it out into the future.
Thanks for bringing those to our attention.
So the 10-year plan hearing is 2 weeks from tonight, Thursday, September 11th. It's at 7 p.m. And it's at 70 Post Road in Greenland.
That's 1 week from.
Oh, that's 1 week, correct, yes.
Going
Time
through
flies.
September pretty fast.
1 week from tonight,
Okay.
September 11th.
At the Central School, is that what you said?
I believe that's what it's, 70 Post Road.
70 Post Road.
Okay, great. All right, with that, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you.